computer.
And where do we get this document, Pastor?
I will be sharing with you. It will be all on your cloud, but you may not be able to locate it. I will give it to you today. Okay. I am putting that right now on the chat, because in case I forget it later, I will put it right now itself. Okay. Document. Second. Once I put it, it is easy for you all to Ministry Practicum. Okay. It is on your, it's there on your cloud, but you don't want to run through the cloud. I've put it there for you. Okay. I hope you all seen it. So a practicum is a tangible way for students to maximize the benefit that can be derived from their presence in real life ministry. So here what they're doing is, actually what we are learning, we should do ministry and record that ministry. But they are also giving you opportunity to present your ministry. Maybe for example, in March, I did a teens conference. I can take the time I prepared, the time I prayed, the time we had team meetings, and the time of the actual project, and present that in this format. What did you do? What was easy? What went well? What was challenging? What did I learn from this? How will I implement this in future? That's all. I will give you samples for that. We have all heard someone say it is the teacher who always learns the most, not the student. So they say that by doing, learning is the best. That is the idea. And they talk about so many things, which I'm not going to touch. I'm not going to touch the philosophy. It's beautiful. You can really work on that if you want to read it and get it. But for us, more important is, how do I earn a credit from this practicum? The Antioch school has two types of practicum: ministry practicum and teaching practicum. Teaching practicum is not there for you as Seaman students, but as MN students, you need to do it. That means you should be teaching first principles to your church or a group of people, and you should record the same thing. What did you do? That means what day you did it, what are the classes, what are the topics you did, what went well, what was challenging, the same thing, but it is about your teaching of the first principles. Okay. For ministry practicum, you need to, both are opportunities to earn credit, learning from experience. For ministry practicum, this is important. You need to report the amount of time spent in preparation for, engagement in, and reflection of the experience. This is very, very important. Amount of time spent on preparation, engagement in, and reflection of the experience. You can also tell what you learned in that experience. It's their part of those things. The credit value follows the standard formula for academic credit, namely 1 semester hour of credit for each 45 hours of learning practice. Now, this 45 hours means, now I spend every day half an hour praying for the program, before the program. So there was about maybe 1 month I prayed, half an hour, 30 days into half an hour is about how many, 15 hours I would have spent praying. Okay. I prepared, in my preparation, I spent 10 hours, so 25 hours. The actual event was for 3 days. So 3 days, I spent about 10 hours, each 30 hours. So I would have made about 50, 65. You can also show any program where you did up to 90 hours. You will get 2 credits in 1 ministry practicum. So total, you need 3 credits actually for your Seaman. So at least a 45 hours program you have to show. Otherwise, it won't be valid for credit. You may earn 1 to 3 credits for each ministry practicum, depending on the amount time you spent. For teaching practicum, okay, forget that. We don't need to look into that. Although both types of practicum use the same criteria: experience, observation, reflection, and conceptualization, and anticipation of future experience, there is a slight difference between explanations in the criteria. For instance, as a ministry practicum report must include calculation of time spent in order to meet the experience criteria. But the teaching practicum does not. In teaching practicum, you don't have to put time. Okay. So let's see how it works. So you can take teaching practicum from something you are doing currently. or something in the past. But they say that it's good to take not too far away. It preferably, at some time they were saying 3 months, but it's not possible. So they're given up to 2 to 3 years time. To if you want to take something that you did in the last 6 months, it's very good. The last 1 year is fine. You can document it. Consecutive. Ideally, you could attach ministry practicum to each other. At the end of the one ministry practicum, report the anticipation of future. This naturally leads to actually having that as a concrete experience for your next minute. So you can connect it. One ministry practicum you did. Suppose I did a teens conference this year. I can do a teens conference for the next year. When it finishes, I can connect it this to. Okay. So that's possible. So ultimately, what you need to do is, it is best to focus on a limited period of time. We recommend using a 3-month period. In this manner, you can have a well-contained experience. So preferably don't take a 1-year program and show 45 hours or 90 hours or 120 hours. We don't want that. We prefer that you do a maximum, any program that would not extend beyond a 3-month period. I hope that is clear. It's a 3-month period. Okay. 3-month period. Okay, it's not allowing me. Yeah, 3-month period. Okay, so now here is your template. So ministry practicum table, you should write your title here. You can replace this with your title. I will give you the template also. Okay. Experience. What did you do? This is it is spoon feeding actually. They tell you what to do. Describe briefly an area of substantial past or current ministry experience for which you would like to make improvements. Describe the experience in terms of what, where, with whom, when, and for how long. Calculate the number of actual hours spent in the experience over a defined period of time. So you need to say from this date to this date, this many hours, all those things you need to mention. I will show you some examples. Reflective observation. How did it go? How did that entire ministry go? Describe what went well and what was challenging. Give a paragraph each for a few things that went well and a few things that were challenging. I have my own thoughts on this. I don't use paragraphs. I use bullet points or a numbering system. Okay. Now, the question is, what did you do? Very simple. You need to put all the facts. How did it go? Very simple. Then what lessons did you learn from it? So the lessons will be like, what went well? So why did it go well? So that's a lesson you learned. Why did it go bad? That's a lesson you learned. Okay. So you need to write both. So describe why you think things above went well. Describe why you face the challenges. Give a paragraph analysis for each thing that went well and each thing that was challenging. Okay. Very simple. It's nothing. Don't get worried about this, how difficult it is. I will show you a sample that will be very easy for you. Then is active experimentation. That means, how can you prepare for an actual improvement? So you are saying that if I do this again, I will do it like this. Describe what you would make sure to do the same next time. Describe what you would do differently. So that is coming from your what went well, the first part. What went bad and wherefore how you will do it to make it better. Till here, do you think is it difficult? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't share with you. Oh my God. Sorry. Please forgive me. Huh?
You were listening to your lecture and wondering.
I am so sorry. You should all ask me, Please forgive me.
So is this there in the...
I just posted it in your group. You can open it. It's there. Whatever I said is there in this document. Okay. I'm just going to repeat it very fast for you all. Okay. Sorry. What is a practicum? You just need to read just some idea of it.
Is it there in the cloud, Pastor?
It is in the cloud. I just posted on the group. Did you see it?
Okay.
So everything is here in this. Okay. Now, when you go to this, is the philosophy. It is a little heavy. If you like reading it, it's very good content. You can read it. Otherwise, you can just skip it. Where did they get the philosophy for this? Okay. What is more important for you is, how do I earn a credit? So they explain you how you get gonna credit. How does it work? So what kind of ministry you will take? Something that you're doing currently, something you've done in the past, something that you have done consecutively. That is, you did the same thing repeated next year or 6 months later, integrated. So that is something which will advance. We don't have to break your head on it.
So
At
we
the-
need to take one of them, or
You need to take something that you can document 45 hours or more to get one
Okay.
credit.
Okay.
I will give you a sample for that. Now, Ministry Practicum template, experience, what did you do? Okay, describe briefly. So they've given the question, what you need to do. You need to tell when it happened, why it happened, where it happened, with whom it happened, all of those things. See, describe the experience in terms of what, when, where, how long. Calculate the number of hours and put. So that will complete your experience. Then is reflective observation. How did it go? So what did you do? How did it go? Describe what went well and what was challenging. You give a paragraph for each, or you can write bullet points. Then you have, what did you learn from this? What did you learn means basically, why do you think it went well? Or why do you think it was challenging? What did you learn from that? So you by answering that why, you will get what lessons did you learn from it. The last is, how can you prepare for actual improvement? That means from what you did well, how you would do it again. What went bad, how you will change, and how will you get it done better. That's all the thing that is there. So there's a ministry example here. My Ministry Practicum report is related to, I'm going to read the whole thing for you to make it easy. Okay. My Ministry Practicum report is related to my ministry as a preacher, specifically as a preacher in Sunday service. This is not an acceptable one, but I'm going to still read it. It is my responsibility to preach expository sermons on Sunday mornings. My church is in suburban Chicago. Our congregation is what you might call a traditional North American evangelical group. It is mostly composed of white, upper middle class professionals and their families. I spend approximately 4.5 hours per week in preparation and another 1.5 hours delivering the sermon. Over the period of 2 months, I spent 45 hours in preparation and delivery of sermons. Thus, my Ministry Practicum is worth 1 credit toward my Antioch product. You can write it exactly. Yeah.
Pastor, I have a question.
Ah.
So you said that that activity has to get over in in a period of 3 months, but this is something that a person is doing continuously. Why I'm asking is because I also wanted to include in my practicum something which I generally do continuously. So, but it's fine. Like what I understood from this example, and the fact that you said 3 months means that we may be doing that activity, but we have to calculate that period which
45
totals
hours.
up to this many
45 hours.
hours.
Now,
Okay.
Shiva, you may be preaching once in a month. Okay.
Okay.
So you can put 3 or 4 months or 5 months together, and you can draw out for 45 hours.
Does it
Yeah,
have
yeah.
to
I
be
was
only,
thinking about writing, but yeah, I'll include that. Yeah.
Pastor, does it have to be only preaching, or it can be
No,
also?
no. Preaching is a very bad example, actually. We
Yeah.
prefer not to do with preaching, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. But those who are having nothing else can put this. Observation and reflection. My responsibility is not merely to preach sermons that encourage or inspire our congregation. Rather, I am supposed to be teaching them God's word and helping them to apply its truths in a transformational way in their lives. We don't want preaching to be just a Sunday thing, but rather supposed to be a thing that helps a congregation to follow and obey Jesus Christ through the week. I study God's word diligently. I have confidence that I have mastered the biblical teaching about which I preach. My sermons are well crafted in terms of structure, progression of thought, and my application are carefully designed for the real life situations of our congregation. Yet, I am not convinced that I am very successful. My sermons do seem to be just a Sunday thing. Specifically, when I talk to people about previous sermons, they don't seem to know very much about the portions of God's word from which I preach. In fact, some of them don't even, so some good things that happen and some bad things, okay? I don't even seem to know what portion I have taught them. Further, it seems that most of them have not followed through with significance of the teaching in terms of application and transformation in their lives. When I ask them about the content and impact of my sermons, I tend to get blank looks, vague responses, and they try to change the subject. That is a fact. I think it's now when I ask people to tell me about the things in our church that are having transformational impact on them, they tell me about things that have happened in their small groups or in the relationship with others in the church. Rarely do they make reference to my sermons. As I reflected on this reality, it made me recognize just how one-sided and non-relational my sermons are. My preaching is all a one-way communication. I try to tell what people are thinking and how they are reacting by the looks on their faces, but I am not confident that I am really able to tell. Even when I greet them after the service and they say, thanks, Pastor, for another good sermon, rarely do they say something specific or unique to that particular sermon. I also notice that there is a lot of energy in the hallway before and after the church service as people interact with each other. But when I preach, people are still and not energetic. It makes me wonder what I can do to improve the effectiveness of my sermons in terms of actually teaching God's word and helping it to have intended impact on the congregation. As I reflected, now he's conceptualizing the learning. He has written what went well, how did you go, what went well, and what went challenging. Okay, what did you do? That is here. What did you do is here. How did it go is here. And now we have come to what did you learn? Okay, as I reflected on the challenges regarding the effectiveness of my preaching, it made me wonder if there were things I could do to bring a more community-oriented experience to my sermons. Our people care deeply about each other, and nearly everyone says that they want to learn God's way and be transformed by it. I need to consider ways to bring my sermons into their conversations and relationships. I need to consider ways to bring their conversations into my sermons. I need to find ways to help them engage more deeply with me in conversation about sermons. Additionally, so he's telling, he's kind of learn his learnings from his what he did, okay, and the outcome he got. In my sermon. Additionally, I need to tie my sermons more intentionally with some of the discipleship and leadership development programs that are also part of our church. That means what they're learning in the care cells and discussing. My sermon should be related to that so that it will go into their conversations. Right now, my sermons are really more like a separate track of isolated weekly activities rather than steps in a developmental pathway. So what am I going to do in future? Now that I have this learning, for the next 9 weeks, I'm going to experiment with my preaching. On Wednesdays, I'm going to send out an email to the entire congregation that gives them a brief introduction to the upcoming sermon. It will include a brief questions that I will ask them to ask at least one other person in our congregation before I preach on Sunday. It could be done with someone at home. They could be interact by phone, text, or social media. We will also resend an email on early Sunday morning, encouraging them to ask the questions, somebody on the hallway in the Sunday service. We will have the questions on posters on the wall on the screen before the service. On the first few Sundays of the experiment, I may even give a few minutes at the start of the church service for them to talk about the questions. I'm not sure this is a good idea because it may encourage some to wait until Sunday morning to talk about them. So he's kind of reflecting on both the positive and negatives of what he's saying. At the beginning of each sermon for 9 weeks, I'm going to have a conversation on the platform with 2 or 3 members of the congregation, or I may wander into the congregation if they seem scared of going up to the platform. I will have them share their answers to the questions, but also talk a little bit about their feelings related to the exercise. I expect that many of them will find that odd and may not necessarily see its value. As I talk to them, I will explain to them and the congregation what I'm trying to do. The bulk of my sermon will probably not be very different than that they were. However, when I get to the end of my sermon, I will give them another set of questions that will build on their earlier questions and drive them into an implications of my sermon. Specifically, they will be related to transformation in their lives and impact in communities. When possible, I'll try to connect it with some of the curriculum that we are using for discipleship and leadership development. We will put these questions on the screen, put them on the posters in the hallway, and send them by email immediately after the sermon. My hope is that this experience will become the base for my next Ministry Practicum report as I discuss. It's connected. It's like, consecutive. Now, in the next ministry report, he will write about what he did and how he improved. It reflect on its success and challenges considered what way. So, do you see his Ministry Practicum? It is a very simple thing, right? Any of you having difficulty with this?
So if we take two different from the past, we take one kind of ministry and present another kind of ministry, so it will not be connected.
Need not be. Your 3 Ministry Practicums need not be connected at all.
Okay.
But if you want to make it 3 consecutive experiences, that's also allowed. Okay, I'm going to share mine now so that you can get an Indian experience of this.
Pastor, should we give the updates on our progress like that, or?
I'll just show you. So here's my Ministry Practicum. New Life Fellowship, Bangalore, Kannada Church Network, Church Planters Training, Part 2. Okay. Experience. What did you do? So the question is there. So I actually read the question and I wrote what? Church Planters Training facilitated by Transformational Leadership Institute, New Life Fellowship. I've changed the names and all because it's part of a project that we did. Where? Nirjahari Conference Center, Karmalaram, Bangalore, Karnataka. Whom? New Life Fellowship, Kannada Church. When? 27th, 28th February and 1st March 2022. Number of participants, 65 adults, male and female. Okay? Is this okay? Experience. Then planning. This training project was carried as a part of a funding that came into our church network to develop leaders. COVID breakout had severely hampered and delayed the training. This was the second installment of the training and a continuation of the previous training. I started by engaging the leaders of the Kannada New Life Project to consider second training as a continuation. I had several rounds of meetings with their leaders, with them actually, that means the leaders. We discussed about the objectives of the course. We discussed about the content of the course. We also discussed about the logistics of the course and the management of the facility. Total time taken for the ministry. Total planning time was 2 hours into 6 sessions. We had 12 planning sessions, so 12 hours. Preparation of content, 4 hours per week. 16 weeks, 54 hours. Actual training, 2.5 days into 10 hours, 26 hours. Total time spent, 92 hours. So how many credits I'll get? Two credits.
Two, Pastor.
So the thing here is, what did I do? Can you see how detailed I've written? What did I do? The guy who is reading this will definitely know I did it. Because I have all the dates. I have everything there. What they're looking for is authenticity. You didn't create this. Okay. It's very important. Then reflective observation. How did it go? What went well? The training content was really new to the participants. That means there was freshness in the whole thing. The curiosity of the people was very high. The content matched the goals of the course. The content matched the curiosity of the participants. The content was well received by the participants and the pastors. The participants enjoyed the training style. We use a dialogical and workshop style with breakout sessions after every major idea shared from the scriptures. There was a lot of good discussions and conclusion from all the workshop tables and groups indicating good involvement and learning. Good breaks for food and snacks. Children above 5 years old had a parallel conference running, so they didn't disturb the parents, basically. That's a good thing we did. Food quality was well appreciated. The venue ambience and facilities were well received. Due to our previous session learning, we had a good translator. So from the previous lesson, it's a continuous one, okay? We had a church planters training program that was funded. So we were teaching our some of our churches to in the whole church planning thing. That's how it came. But we had a first one which was not clearly done. I mean, I had some problem with the translator. So now this is something which I'm continuing. We had a good translator who has worked with me earlier so that the cultural and language gap was definitely closed. What did not go very well? The gap in language, even with translation, was better, but still a long way to adapt because the content and the people, culture, and language has always a gap. So, but it didn't go, some of it, I mean, I would say there was gaps in the whole thing. The culture gap between me, the trainer, and the participants was a bit better, but has to develop as I get familiar with the language. So when I am speaking and I am hearing the translator, I don't know what because the language is not known to me. I don't know what that language, that translator is translating me, how culturally he's, putting it, we don't know. In the process, did he lose the message? The 10 hours stretch to cover the content over 2.5 days was a tough one. I mean, people were really stretched. That was something that we needed to think of. Management of children, especially babies. Below 5, we have no ministry. So that was a tough one. People were tired out by the end of the day. Very intellectual experience with limited prayer sessions to allow the Spirit to sing the content deep into the person. We had so much of content, we kind of pushed the content into 2.5 days. In the process, we missed out to spend sufficient time in prayer. Perhaps the most sad part was that a good number of the last attendees did not get leave to attend this one. We had a few new people who had not attended the first session. These were all negative things. Okay. So what lessons did I learn? The reason for a good reception of the content was because of thorough discussions to understand the gaps in the knowledges of the Kannada church community. So I had in my previous meeting, I had sat and before the actual session happened, I had sat and reflected with the leaders and the people about what was the issues that they faced with regard to the gaps in knowledge. Designing the curriculum was done to keep curiosity up and for a better engagement and concentration. The positive thing. Engaging the pastors in discussion and taking their suggestions to design the curriculum helped to get their buy-in and thereby ensuring good promotional activities in churches, especially after the first session. Involving the pastors in the learning process was beneficial to see that the learning continues when they get back to the churches and cell groups. We got good yield of participants because we arranged for a team of outdoor specialists to engage the children and also share the gospel with them during the 2 days that kept them occupied with activities, and at the same time, they also encountered the Lord. That means the children's program was just not a babysit, but they also went through an experience. Need to emphasize on deployment of house churches post-training within 2 weeks to avoid discontinuity and failing of training goals. So that's something that we learned. We needed to emphasize that they need to plant a church. Since this is a continuation of the previous training and with new participants, there was a need to review a previous. So we had to review it. So I had to consider always the idea of reviewing what was learned in the past when it is a consecutive intake. Now, how can I prepare for actual improvement? There needs to be effort from my side to understand the culture of the people. Get a translator who can understand my cultural lingo and also the cultural lingo of the participants so that the communication gap is reduced and better comprehension of the content. To make the content a little lighter and more relevant to the participants of this culture. More use of case studies and real life situations. Creating artificial environments and replicate learnings in the group. Make it a 3-day event to see that they do only 6 hours per day. Give longer breaks to see that people have sufficient time to attend. Arrange for babysitters who can manage 2 to 5 years. Use a short, relevant videos to increase the learning process and have better net impact. We could not get this organized even this time. Have to get it included in the curriculum soon to have better results. I will see to it that I keep the evening post-dinner time for prayer where people can have spiritual experiences and encounter the Lord and be touched by the Spirit. We could not get it done this event time. Will emphasize on deployment of house churches post-training within 2 weeks to avoid discontinuity and failure of training goals by following up with the pastors and leaders. Children, what do you think? Is this something that is difficult? I need all of your feedbacks. What do you think? Anything that you're doing, any ministry that you're doing, you can, you organized a study camp, you can do that. You organized a picnic, you can do that. Church picnic, anything. But it should touch 45 hours.
So as you know, my ministry is more admin related.
Mm-hmm.
So I will need to have a creative way of
document. Yes, you need to. You need creativity to bring this into. But like he uses 4 months, 2 months sermons and combined it into this thing. Maybe you did a sermon series. You can do that.
No, I'm saying my ministry is more of admin.
Yeah, I'm just saying. So creativity can be brought in different ways. So in your admin related, probably some event you conducted, preparations you did for that,
Yeah.
So maybe you didn't do the event, but you were supporting that in the
yeah.
So you can say administrative for this thing, something like that. You can put it, and you can put that. Maybe you spend so many hours preparing the list. You had some meetings with people. The actual event, what did you do? All of that you can put it.
So if that one event covers 92 hours, will I get 2 credits?
Yes, you can do 120 hours and you will get all the 90 plus 45 is 135. 135 hours if you have or more, you can do you will get all 3 credits in one Ministry Practicum.
Go. Okay.
Yeah. But the problem is you can't take an event that you did over 3 years and put it into one.
No.
Yeah.
You have to do it in 9 months, the last 9 months.
Yes.
So any event which is consistent, like daily or something, can we add in this?
No. So if it is you're doing this event for the last 10 years, 15 years, you can't do it. You have to break it down into, I conducted a fasting prayer for 30 days. So from this date to this date, a fasting prayer was for 2 hours in the evening. I prepared so much time for this. I prepared in prayer for this. I prepared in teaching for this. I followed up after the prayer with this. So like that, you have to take. But it should be between 2 dates. That's not very far away. Understood, Pastor?
Yes, Pastor, got it.
Okay. Anybody else on any other questions? Good to ask a lot of questions so that you have clarity in your thinking so you can immediately implement this. What you all need to do is write down 3 specific things that you did. Could be a fasting prayer. It could be sermons. Sermons is the last one we will keep. If it's a series of sermons, it's a series sermon. Like you spend 6 weeks speaking on something. Okay, that is fine. Maybe it's a Sunday school VBS. If you've done a VBS, maybe you didn't actually teach, but you organized it. You oversaw it. You can write that. You had a church picnic, how you prepared for it, what went happened, all those things. You had a conference that you organized. You can put that. So there are so many things that you can do. But it has to be what you did, not what others did. You can't document what others did. You have to document what you did, what went well, what did you do, what went well, what went bad, or what was challenging. What did you learn from this? How will you improve how will you use your learning to improve next time? Is that difficult? It needs a little thinking. First time when you write, it's a little challenging. When you upload it, it will come back to you. Not to worry. We'll tell you what to change. And then you re-upload, it will clear. Second time, it will be very easy. What you need to do is first identify 3 or 4 events that fits with a time period that you can substantially write. And you will have to think to expand it. You'll have to think to expand it. Okay. For example, you had to arrange transportation. You got up in the morning, you had to go there and wait in the bus stand, cats pick them up and come. You can include that for a conference. That's time you spent.
So how old or how recent it should be?
Not more than 3 years. Ideally, they say 1 year, 3 months and all. But I've got permission at least for 2 to 3 years. Nobody will create any issues for you. More than 3 years, I doubt that they will accept it. Even 3 years, I don't know, but I will see to it somehow I can talk and see if that can clear out. Ideally, they want something that you're doing or just done 3 months back or 5 months back or 6 months back. But you may not get enough. So they are opening it up to 1 year to 2 years. Sometimes they have also accepted 3 years old events. Somebody did in one of our earlier batches. Last 3 years VBS, she documented. She connected it. So it went well. She finished all her 3 credits because each VBS has got 5 days, 2 hours in the evening, 6 a day, this thing, planning meetings, curriculum development. So she easily got one VBS itself, she got about 92 hours. And she cleared it out. You can all share your ideas so that others also can know and take it. So I gave you a lot of ideas right now. Any thoughts, comments? I'd like to do Shubha's article also and finish it. So we have substantial content we finished today. So now with MAP, you will be parallelly working. Ministry Practicum, you will parallelly work. Ministry Practicum will take you about, if you sit continuously, in 2 hours, you can finish one Ministry Practicum. And do it in my format so that it is easy for you to think through. I have put it in such a way that you can think through it. Any questions, any comments, any ideas?
Please post the video first.
Yeah, sure. That will be done as soon as I finish. I'll upload the video. All right, if nothing is there, I will ask Shubha to present. I will just give her the rights to share screen. Her article is a paradigm shifting article that she's going to share. She's going to share the story from the Reformation up until now, how Christianity developed, but very powerful, some learnings that you will take from this. Now, when you're doing this, you need to remember something, and that is very, very important. Let me just put it up for you. I'm just going to, Shubha, I'll just do an intro and then I will hand it over to you. 1 minute.
Sure.
So when you are doing an article, you must always place it in context. So if you see, we are in unit 1 here. Can you see we are in unit 1? Introduction to the class we did. Drawing principles for everything we finished. Issues, we did it. And weeks 2 issue this thing. Then unit 2, we started the role of the local church in fulfilling the Great Commission. We did issue 1, understanding the Great Commission is what we are working with right now. We finished 1 article. We have Kevin Giles, I think we finished. The second issue is this thing, and you will finish. There are only 2 issues here. We'll finish. Now, what do we see? Let's go to. These things are basically general stuff that you can read because it will make you understand how the course works. But for us, as far as our concern today is, so course 1, introduction, keys from Acts, role of the local church. This is our 5 units. This is the core objective, developing a thing, deciding a model, determine a biblical definition. So all of the core ideas are there. The progression of the unit, summary of what you should know from the unit once you finish the program. So we are in this one, role of the local. Building on the data of Acts study, this unit addresses the issue of the centrality of the local church in God's plan for this age. God has not designed anything else. There is only church as far as God is concerned, as revealed in the scriptures, as spoken by Jesus, and is a mystery hidden in the Old Testament, but has been revealed, okay? So God doesn't have anything else. In our generation, the Great Commission is often reduced to an individualistic enterprise, the multiplication of individuals. The question is asked, how did the Great Commission unfold? The unit attempts to demonstrate that the focus of the in the first century was not a multiplication of individuals, but a multiplication of believing communities, the local church, and that the local church was central to the unfolding of this plan. So key. Now, in my paradigm shift ideas that I shared, can you see this was a paradigm shifting? So this will shift the paradigm. This unit will shift the paradigm. It will give you a fresh view of missions. Okay. So now, what do? We go to issue 1. We finish this. We looked at so the issue 2 was the key one, which is the keys to establishment of establishment. Issue 1 is how to read the book of Acts so that you can draw the keys. And we did this in extension. We did arthopatia. We kind of did all these questions. Now we are in unit 2. We have gone through these verses, isn't it? In detail, we went through these verses and we saw the biblical basis of how the local church is should fulfill the Great Commission. That the church is the tool that God is going to use to facilitate the kingdom on earth. That we saw it in the scriptures. So there is our conviction coming from. But we also want to know how the scholars saw it. So we did, I think the second article we did, we didn't do any article, that means, no? Nobody has done anything till now. Did somebody do Hesselgrave? I think somebody did Hesselgrave, no? Who did Hesselgrave? The Heart of Christian Missions is done.
Sam brother had did one of the.
Yeah, Sam did it. Yeah, Sam did it. So you have already finished the first article, which is good. I hope all of you have read it. It's a key article. Today, we are going to read this. So with this, you are getting an idea of what is Christian mission. So what is the issue here? Understanding Great Commission. So these articles will give you an idea of what is Great Commission. But many times many of the articles are negative articles. That means in that you see something what happened, which shows and how things flowed out because they are not following what we are talking about here. Okay, so you have to be careful when you read an article how that is relevant. It can be negatively relevant or positively relevant. Okay, so we need to remember these questions. When you come across the term Great Commission, what meaning does it evoke in your mind? What did Jesus intend when he gave his disciples a Great Commission? How do you think the disciples understood this? How does your understanding of the Great Commission and the meaning intended by Christ differ? How is it the same? Okay, we discussed that. A lot of discussion we had on that. In what ways and to what extent is the Great Commission an individual mandate? In what ways and to what extent is it a corporate or community mandate? What are some implications for improperly understanding the responsibilities of each of these spheres as we structure ourselves for the establishment and expansion of our own ministries? So what he's saying is, the Great Commission has an individual commitment. The Great Commission has a corporate commitment. And what is the extent of this and how they overlap? That is what we need to discuss. How did the Great Commission unfold in the book of Acts? How does this unfolding fit with today's missions and discipleship models? In which model can we be confident of the Spirit's guiding? So he's nailing it in the last. He's taking you through a journey and bringing you to a place where you have no answer, but that church is the central tool or the central facilitating agency of God's kingdom on earth, the central facilitating agency of the Great Commission. So here is a project we are going to work with. Write a 1 to 2 page summary explaining how the Great Commission unfolded historically from its giving at the end of Christ's time on earth through the end of Acts. Be sure to address the contributions and roles of individuals and local churches in the summary. Very simple one. But you need to keep in mind also something very important. That is, 1 second, let me see if this thing is open till. No, it's not open. 1 minute. Let me just open it. So if you go to your Acts, if you open your Acts document, your thing, you will see the first one is develop a basic understanding of the biblical keys to the establishment and expansion of the first century church. As taught in the book of Acts. Very simple. We did it, we uploaded it. But we have this full picture of Acts. We know how the church grew and multiplied. And it is in connection with the Great Commission given by Jesus. Okay, so we saw the whole thing. Now he says, so the second competency we are working with for the competency question aligned to the unit 2 is develop convictions on the role of the local church in missions today. So when you write your paper, you are drawing from the biblical theology we did, and your conviction comes from the scriptures, and it is supported by the authors positively or negatively, and you are developing your conclusion in a discussion where you are discussing what you agree, what you don't agree, what is your conclusion from scriptures, all of it you build in there. Write your ministry reflection. I hope you got the picture. Now, Shubha, you're ready to go.
Okay, Pastor, I'll share my screen.
Shubha, don't worry. If you cannot finish it, we'll do it next time, but do whatever you can.
Yes, Pastor, because I realized it was too text heavy and like it has got a lot of facts which I can't like shorten and summarize, but yeah, I tried.
Don't worry.
So, okay.
You're a content developer, so content so
But Pastor, I don't have any experience in theological content, but yeah, I can. Yeah. Okay. So we are looking at this article, which is like from Luther to Carey, and what happened, which affected the modern missionary movement. And like Pastor said, some articles are even negative. So this article is not negative, but certain things which the church wasn't doing. And when they did even start, what happened is that experiment, one very successful, like as we go through the different slides, we know one very successful pioneering thing, we could say, but that could not be replicated. And that is why Carey got to be known as the father of the modern missions, whereas actually there were people who in the Protestant or like how we say Lutheranism, where he did these reforming of the church, like through his thoughts and the activities that he conducted. So through that, the reform that came, that could not compete with the Catholic Church, which was generally sending out missions. And why that happened. So despite all that things, like I said, that pioneering experiment, which happened very close to our homeland, we'll see that. And still it was not replicated. And that's why there was a gap. And then Carey came. And then that's why he's known the father of the mission. So we'll see what failed and where the church failed, and what was the entire thought, and what were the ideas that led to missions being put on a back burner. And let's go about the article now. So okay, so that there were like this is like nothing, because this is an article. This agenda is the 3 parts of that book or that article, where we so there's one part which says why missions were missing after Reformation. And then we will see what William Carey and his missions was, and why we need to study the third part, Pietism and missions. Like, see, everything is not chronological, because Carey came later, but how Carey got influenced by the Pietism and the earlier missions before him, which were happening in the Reformed Church, is what we'll be studying. So there is the first part, which of course little bit of very few like sentences about Reformation. I haven't done so much of church history, so I will not be able to give much more than the article, but whatever I understood and little bit of Googling, so that. And yeah,
Sister, one thing.
Yeah.
So what as you're going through this article, I'm not sure if the author is going to address it, but this is a negative article in the sense it is showing you how the Reformation initiated 200 years of no missions. And after 200 years of Reformation, they started missions, but the church had nothing to do with it. But God used all of these things. Let's see how it is. It's very interesting. Am I correct, Subha?
Yes, Pastor, yes. Because it was more like an individualistic thing when it did even start and landed in our country, in Tamil Nadu. So we'll see that. Fine. Now let us look at the introduction. So this is about the article. This is not the introduction of the slide I'm putting together, but this is what the article they're saying. So it is adapted from this thing called. This is one part of the 2-part series by these authors, and which says it's like the plants in the title is Plants in the Platform of Modern Missions. So there were 2 parts, and this article is adapted from one of those parts in that 2-part series. And I think a lot of you would know more that Martin Luther, he sparked the Protestant Reformation, and their main tenets were of this thought was salvation by grace alone and through faith alone, and in Christ alone, based on infallible. Infallible is that, yeah, scriptures are not wrong. They are absolutely perfect, and we cannot find faults with them. So those were the main tenets, and it was hailed all over Europe. But what happened is, despite this Reformation, it did not result in missionary expansion. And then let's move to the next slide, where we'll start looking what happened. So the first part is why missions were missing after Reformation. Okay, so missing missions. So firstly, like we discussed about Reformation, in 1517, that is when I think he posted some 25-point agenda or something that clearly I don't remember. Martin Luther, it sparked that.
99 points. It is I mean,
Okay.
he was a Catholic
Okay.
priest. He had a revelation, and he wrote down the 99 theses, and he nailed it on his church wall. I mean, he never intended to create the Protestant movement,
Oh, yeah.
but he, in his conviction, he did it, and which of course sparked the whole thing.
Okay. Sure. Yes. Thanks, Pastor.
One,
Yeah,
one
so
second,
that was
one second.
part of the
Anybody done church history here? Anybody is well versed with church history?
I have done, but I'm not very well versed. But yes, I have done.
Okay, you can add, because I am also learning still church history. Through my course, especially essentials, we did a lot of church history there. But this is one of the articles that does a good church history from Reformation to our current this thing. Anybody else, you are free to contribute at different times. Okay.
But this was new learning for me when I read through this.
Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah, good, awesome. So please feel to contribute, free to contribute as you feel needed.
Okay. So yeah, please do stop me in between. I wouldn't mind the interruption because like I didn't know too much of history, so I was feeling a bit like blank in some places. Yeah, so 70 that sparked the Reformation
Sister, we are
movement.
losing you in
But
between, huh?
then fast forward to
We are losing you in
oh,
between, but
sorry,
okay, no
sorry.
problem, no problem. Keep
Wait,
going.
let me.
Now it's clear.
No, Pastor, yeah, I'll open the door because the internet router I'm sitting next to it, so hopefully it should have.
Okay.
Mm. Then but whereas okay, so this was the situation. Now we understand that though there was Reformation, but there was no Protestant missionary activities until 1792. Whereas on the other side, the Roman Catholic Church was regularly sending missionaries all over the world. We are aware of this fact because not just history, it's part of our present also. Like I was born in a Christian hospital run by Catholic missionaries. I studied in a school which was like run by order of Catholic nuns. And my brothers also studied in like some like order of priests, like they used to run that school. So yeah, we are all aware and we have all seen it's very close to us, the Catholic Church and its missions, and it's I'm sure it's all over the world. So then these are some names in the Protestant world, like Martin Luther, of course, like he sparked the Reformation, then John Calvin and Anabaptists, but none of them had any vision for missions. So that time period which we are studying, in which literally for more than 200 almost 300 years there was no activity. Why was this? So these leaders, they did not have any vision for missions. Then Luther also taught that so then part of the thing was that Luther taught that the Great Commission has already been fulfilled and there's no need for mission. So they believed that the apostles were put in charge of the commission because they were like what Jesus had told them. So they believed that they had already completed, they had gone out to the whole world and they had completed the mission. So now there is no need to be part of the Great Commission because the original people who Jesus had told it to, they had already completed the job. So that is what they believe. Now, these were main factors based on the leadership and their lack of vision. Now, there were some other factors also. So people were being so the Catholic Church was believing, sorry, I said believe, theirs means the Catholic Church believed that there was true apostleship because it through the unbroken line of succession through laying of hands. So they says that okay, our initial um,
What happened, sister? Shubha sister, are you there? Hello.
We lost it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
can you all hear me?
Yeah, now it's
Okay.
We lost you in
But
between.
yeah, I switched. I'm trying to switch. I tried to switch my network, so hopefully this one may work better. I'm not sure. Um, okay, so did you see hear me till the part of the left half of the thing, missing missions?
Yeah, we just
Can you
heard
see?
that the Catholic Church believed that the apostleship was continuous. Yeah, we were there.
Yeah. So I think they believe through Peter or Paul or what they who was supposed to be the first pope. I mean, like I said, I don't know. Yeah, Peter.
Peter.
So so then they said that it has continued unbroken because then they were laying hands and then the leadership so it was an unbroken line of succession. So they believe that they were the true apostles, like the apostles, as we know, are the ones who were sent with the purpose of spreading the gospel and the mission. So they say that anyway, we are the true apostles, and yeah, we are doing the work, and they said it is them, the Catholic Church, and not the Protestants, who were sending out real missionaries like to the world. So then the Catholic Church claimed that yeah, we are the apostles and we are continuing that work. And there was geographical reason also, that because Central Europe, where Reformation took place, was not in touch with the rest of the world. So of course, if like they're already their communication, and because of the geography, they're not in touch with other places in the world, so their message also will not go out. So that's the one of the reasons. And then the other reason is that they were more engrossed in maintaining gains and defining themselves against the Roman Catholic Church. So this was not written there, but I'm assuming like any new sect or division that comes out from the mainstream, they have to pitch themselves against in terms of ideology and in terms of thought process, why they are different from what is the main. So they were more engrossed in defining themselves and creating their own identity, versus what was happening in the Roman Catholic Church or what the Roman Catholic Church stood for. So they were more engrossed in these reasons and more conceptual and these kind of things, that they were not worried about or focusing on missions. And organizational reason was also because
Sister, 1 minute. So we this is one of the key sentences, and the key thing is the ecclesiastical reason. One of the reasons why there was no missions was that Luther, one is Luther's belief that missions was not needed. Second thing is Luther was, and his entire gang that was there, they were pushed out of the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church has a history of almost 12 centuries. 12 centuries. It's huge time of building traditions and things like that. They were having a solid structure, solid teachings, and though many of it was compromised, but it was so strong, it was well accepted. So when they came out, they had a revelation of the truth. For them to fight, it was like David fighting Goliath. It was like an impossible task of. So they spend all their time. So what was the discovery of Luther? What was the discovery of Luther? Anybody wants to go for it?
Pastor, in which context?
What did Luther discover in 1517? What was the main thrust theologically as far as Luther was concerned?
The just shall live by faith.
Justification.
Sola gratia, sola Christ alone, faith alone.
Yeah.
Scripture.
So what Pooja said was correct. I mean, what all of you said is correct, but Pooja said it perfectly in that the just shall live by faith. And there arose a rediscovering of the gospel, which was completely disappeared in the Catholic Church. They moved from the gospel to good works, and then it went into good works for salvation, and they lost the gospel completely. So what Luther did, as he was reading Romans, which is of course the Magna Carta of Christian faith, or the thesis of Paul on the idea of salvation, or what we call as the mother deed of amartiology, that is the study of salvation. Luther discovered what salvation is, what the gospel is. So Luther then took that and he had to defend that this is the truth. So Luther and all the people of the next 1 or 2 decades, or maybe even close to a century, they spend fighting Goliath. They completely lost focus of everything else. It was only expanding the gospel, rewriting the whole thing, and writing the different tenets of it. If you go to it, which you will study in Essentials, you will study it in detail. My God, it's beautiful. But you will see to the extent that they had to expand it. I think even Paul would have had a complex actually watching the expansions. So, because they were engrossed in the idea of the gospel and having recovered it and excited about it and standing against the largest organization, maybe world over, secular or otherwise, literally a mafia, to stand against them was not easy. And therefore, with that focus, they probably missed out on the missions. I hope all of you understood some idea of that. Any comments, any thoughts to the ecclesiastical reason? Now, here is a little salt on it, okay? You and me, in this moment, in this point in time, we are deeply, deeply influenced by Reformation thinking, by Lutheran thinking, Luther's thinking. We are also still caught up in the gospel. We are still trying to argue whether once saved, always saved. We are still trying to argue predestination versus free will. We are still in the gospel paradigm. That's one of the areas that we will be talking about it a little later. But we need you to capture that idea that we are all products to a great extent of Reformation thinking. Any questions, comments?
Pastor, this ecclesiastical reason engrossed in maintaining gains and defense. This is also some of the cause for the Holy War.
No, the Holy War is in the Catholic side, not on the Protestant side. No,
Other side, huh? Okay.
yeah, because the Crusades happened because Constantine saw a cross. That was in the 4th century, actually. They saw the cross. Then he felt that there should be conquest and went ahead and massacred so many people. And that's still a sore, historical sore, this thing. And the Pope actually recently apologized for the conquistadors and the, what is that other thing that is called, the Inquisitions. We should know church history. It's beautiful. We should know Indian church history. We should know the European church history. We should know American church history. We will go through it. We'll come some point. We'll touch some of these things. All right, Shubha, continue. I thank you.
Okay, thanks, Pastor, for that background. Okay. An organizational reason was now Catholic Church already had, like, this is just a summary, but in that article it says they had order of priests, they had people who did not marry, and they were living in monasteries, and their entire life was dedicated to missions. But the Protestant Church had no such need, and because the basic belief was priesthood of all believers. Yeah, that's true technically. Like we look at scriptures, that is true, but because of that, they felt no need to set apart certain people. And if certain people are not set apart, that means, like, so there's no need for monasteries, and there's no need for monks and like who people who dedicate their entire life, and then they do not involve in like social life, but they are only for mission. So that could not happen like how it was happening in the Catholic Church. So those were the reasons. Now this is a completion of topic one.
Shubha, can you just go one step back? Because
Yes,
just to this thing, you need to realize that the Catholic Church was involved in missions, but their missions was part of good works, and that good works is to be, get their relatives out of purgatory, their own position that they will get when they go to heaven, or they are even going to heaven, was based on the good works. So many priests came in and fully dedicated themselves. They went into monasteries, they lived among, there was many, you still have them. Many of them would not even come out of the monastery. So they dedicated themselves to reading scriptures and studying and things like that. And the teachings of the church, basically the church decided what was the thing. But once the Protestant movement started, they discovered the gospel, and they discovered that one of the key elements was priesthood of all believers. Why did they focus on this? Because the whole Catholic Church was manipulated by the priestly class, and they used many of the theologies like forgiveness and all as something that can be bought, indulgences and all those things. And there was this papal lineage that came from Peter, and that was the only way that you could, they had to be the ones who carried the gospel, kind of a thing. They are the ones who carried, because the apostles were the ones who carried it, and therefore the papal order would be the ones that was. So when you broke away from that, then there was no meaning. You must remember, Luther was as much as a Catholic, even in the Protestant side, except for the idea of gospel. Everything else he carried it through. Do you know that? I hope you all are aware of that fact.
Pastor, please, could you repeat that?
That Luther was only clear on the gospel area.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was not against the Catholic Church at all. In fact, the practices of except for the gospel part.
Yeah.
And therefore, the priestly idea, he completely chucked it out. But there were priests in the Lutheran movements. Okay, but their idea of communion and everything was vague, because they were really, still deeply engrossed in Catholicism, except for the gospel part. Then a little bit later, Calvin came. Calvin made a big movement. Then Anabaptists came. So they kept on moving towards, the right direction, as people started reading the Bible in the common language. And you know that this was possible because of people like Huss and what is that other guy named Wycliffe, who translated, and they died. And Gutenberg printed the Bibles in English, and they were put to the stake for that. And because of which the common man read it, and the gospel took off. And even when he was teaching, when they were teaching the gospel, they were keeping on teaching the gospel. People were able to go and read it in their Bibles. Otherwise, they would never see a Bible in their life. No Catholic saw a Bible in their life, because only the priest read it in Latin, and they read it through the lens of what the church was saying. And therefore, every teaching was drawn out of practices, and it was more eisegesis than exegesis. They fit their practices into the theology. So, so those are the ideas that you should keep in mind of how, when you talk about Catholicism and the Protestant movement. The Protestant movement, though it started, they focused only on the gospel, rest everything was Catholic. But as the time went, and as the English language was available, and it was translated to many other languages, people started to read, people started to have revelation, and they started moving towards the early church model. At least we are on that journey now. Any questions? Any thoughts, any comments? This will go into your paper, okay? Develop convictions of church in this thing. We have to write why it did not, and why you think now you are convinced about it. Okay, Shubha, please go ahead.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, so that was topic 1, where we saw why the Protestant movement was lagging, or lacking rather, missions. And now we see William Carey and his missions. And so we will see the life and career of Carey, and the challenges he faced, but then okay, so let's look at that first, his career and the challenges. And okay, so he was born in England, and then he started a Baptist ministry at a young age. and then he taught himself languages, and he read about non-Christian population in this world. And then it was like a sort of an eye-opener for him, because he concluded that it was the responsibility of the church with so many people who are non-Christians, who do not know about Christ. So then he concluded out of that, because he was looks like he was a well-read guy, and if you read so many languages, know so many languages, that means you're exposed to other literature, and your horizon widens. So then he understood that there are a lot many people outside of Europe who are without Christ, and then the church has a responsibility, and it is binding on the church to go out and spread the gospel. So then,
So it's interesting here. The conviction of Carey is very nice. He believed that the church was bound to the commission, or the Great Commission is binding on the church. That was his conviction. But it's interesting that conviction was so good, because almost 200 years, that 250 years, there was no conviction in that area. But suddenly that he gets his conviction. But look at the sad thing that happens, okay?
Okay. So yeah, it's not protest, it's Protestant. So his book is the Magna Carta of the like the great main summary statement of the which contains the main summary statements of the Protestant and the missionary movements. And in this book, he surveyed the advances of Christianity throughout the centuries, the religious state of the world, and he addressed the objections to sending missionaries. So maybe, of course, whatever was prevalent in his time and life, we already know that the Protestant church did not believe in sending missionaries. So then his book addressed all these things, why we are objecting, all possible objections that could be raised to not sending missionaries to the world, because he believed that the church needs to send missionaries, because so many people are non-Christian in this world, and it's the responsibility of the church. So what happened was, then he faced challenges, and then the Baptist Ministers Association thought that God does not need any help to convert this world, and he would predestine them to be saved. So it's like they thought
that was a Calvinistic idea, which of course the Anabaptists also believed, and I think many of the Baptists may still believe that in terms of predestination. And that the whole argument of the Calvinist, Arvinist has been going on for centuries from Calvin onwards. Nobody has a clear answer, and it always causes chaos and division in the church. So you can see that the Baptist Ministers Association thought that God needs no help to convert the world. He would predestine them to be saved. So you can see that theology affected the way they thought about missions. All of you know about predestination, right? And the whole the theology of Calvin and theology of John Arminian, that theology clashes and all of those issues. Yeah. Anyway, please, let's go on.
Okay, so yeah, but then he persisted what he believed, and then that's why finally the Baptist Missionary Society was formed in the year 1792, and then Carey came to India as the first missionary, and he labored for 42 years, and then he compared the experience to mine.
It's important. You're seeing something that happened here. Carey's conviction was that missions was the responsibility of the church, but the church was not interested. So what did Carey do?
Carey formed this society, right? He was instrumental.
Exactly. He formed though it's called Baptist Missionary Society, the Baptist Church had nothing to do with it. It was an independent organization or a body, and Carey founded it. Literally, they were the first ones to form that, because the church was not interested. He was deeply convicted of people need to be saved. So what happened? Carey, as the first missionary, went to India, laboring for 42 years, and compared the experience to mining. It's very beautiful, actually, that word. So 42 years of work in India, he was sent by the Baptist missionary movement. He was not sent by a church. That pattern or idea started the whole mission enterprise movement apart from the church. Okay. Let's go on.
And like I said, I don't know much history, but I heard in one of one guest speaker had come during one of our NLF events, and he said that Carey is like he's part of our Indian history. So many of the languages, the scripts, and the written text, and then the first Bible. It was Carey's effort. Like he learned those languages, he documented those language, he made that script. And then he organized all those language scripts like regional languages and all those dialects, and then he sort of formed that grammar and everything written in that, like documenting thing, so that there's a proper scripted language which people can learn. And then he printed the Bible in that language, like several of the languages here. That is what
Absolutely. I mean, Carey's work is undeniably, I don't know how to put it. It would be, it just transformed. Monumental. Yeah, monumental in terms of Indian missions. So we're not arguing against Carey's work. That's definitely not the idea. But the idea of divorce of the church from missions happened here. And the success of Carey's ministry, of course, eventually took off that whole idea in a different tangent. So when we are speaking this to others also, please never put Carey down. Carey did an amazing work. He actually planted churches, okay? So we'll go to that a little later. But he struggled, and one of his pioneering probably work was in that in creating the script for languages. I think if you read "Let There Be India" by our famous
Babu
Varghese. All of it is recorded there. It's beautiful. I don't know if he's given us references, but a lot of the histories written there, which will kind of explain a lot of what Carey did and other missionaries who came. Carey's is monumental. There's no doubt about it. We should all read Carey's biopic.
You mean a biography, right, Pastor? Biopic, yes. I think would mean the movie which is made on it.
I wish there was a movie made on. I don't know if there is one. I'm not sure. Biography, yeah.
It's there, Pastor. A candle in the dark.
What is that?
Yeah, it is.
A candle in the dark, I think.
Yeah. Good. I'll get that movie.
Yeah, and Pastor, I think I should also Google and send that you said that 99 points. No, what did he nail to the wall? Like
yes,
Luther,
you can do that. Yeah, it'll be nice. It'll be nice. By the way, Martin Luther's one movie is there. It's not an old movie, but they did it in black and white to give you that effect. Brilliant movie. Brilliant. Really worth watching. It's almost like a documentary, but it's like a movie style run. Lovely one. It's still there in the CDs, I think. I don't know if it is there in any of the platforms or soft copy to rent or buy. Not sure, but beautiful movie. You can probably get it in OM, and if you have a DVD player, of course, that sounds like, ancient, but still it's amazing to watch. And it would be a nice time for you to watch this, because now that we talked about
Pastor?
Huh?
Name of the movie?
Martin Luther.
Yes.
All right. Good. So other one is Candle in the Dark. No, that's a good one. Yeah, these are all movies.
It's on YouTube. The Candle in the Dark.
Oh, I see. Okay. Can you share the link, Hannah? If you could search it.
Sure. I'll share in the group.
Yeah. Good. Okay.
Yeah. So then he developed a 5-point mission strategy in India. So throughout his work and how he labored and what he learned, he developed a 5-point mission strategy. So it's developed in India, but generally it's like a 5-point strategy that can be applied anywhere for mission. So so there has to be a widespread gospel preaching through all means. So whatever means are available, the gospel has to be preached far and wide. And the Bible, if it's available in people's language, that is essential, so that people can read and understand. And as soon as the people know the Bible, like they know about God, the gospel has been preached and reached to these areas, we must establish a church so that people can grow and there is a local like leadership. And Then before that, not necessarily it's put in this order, but doesn't mean that. So people's worldview has to be studied, because when we study people's worldview, that's when we can customize the gospel for them, and we can be a part of in harmony with their culture when we preach the gospel. And then also train indigenous leaders. So when the church is established and indigenous leaders are trained, the mission becomes more local, and it's no longer like the mission, but it now becomes the church, like how we learned in the previous sessions which Pastor George took. He explained to us that it's very much not some external organization that has to come, but then it becomes part of the church's activity
So
to
here
be.
is where Carey got it right, in the sense, because you can't preach the gospel and people cannot grow in the truth unless you have the Bible for them to read. So he understood, he studied the language, he created a script, he translated it, taught them the language, then taught them the Bible. Can you imagine the volume of work he did in terms? It's unbelievable for me to think. For me to teach my own people in my own language, in my own culture, I'm struggling. And I'm thinking how this guy came, studied a foreign language. He then created the script for it. He then translated the Bible into that script. Then he taught the people that language, because people didn't know how to read the script because they didn't have a script. So you have to tell them to read it. And then he would, teach them in the ways of Christ. I don't know how I'm close to thinking it's madness. But anyway, Bible in people's language, established church soon. I mean, you can see that his heart for the church was still there. Okay, so Carey is not against church. You must remember that. But you can see how the church got divorced from missions, from the fact that Carey formed a missionary society because the church was not showing interest at all. He needed to raise money, so he created this, and then he comes down to this thing. Study the worldview of people is amazing, and training indigenous leaders, because we didn't want, Carey got it right, but always Western missions always had leadership hold in their hands. But Carey got the idea that, if you're going to plant a church, then you need to have local people to be leading that rather than a missionary leader, foreign missionary leader. Any comments, any thoughts, any ideas? Very juicy article, no? Very nice, relevant to what we are thinking.
Yeah, because unless people have their own people preaching and their own church and Bible in their own language, then until then, Christ would also be like a foreign idea to them, right? And they'll be like somebody else has
So
come.
indigenous leadership was a recent idea, because the Western missionaries couldn't handle it any further. They were failing. Then finally they left the missions, and that's when God raised up indigenous leaders, and then the missions and the churches started to grow. Okay, Shubha, let's go forward. We got another 10 minutes. So whatever you can do in 10 minutes, perfect.
Okay, so now, we will not go much into, because the article doesn't go into it. We're not dealing about now Carey's missions or what he did. The purpose was to understand. Now, this is where we go backwards. So, what happened in this? Which year was this? 1792, and after that, and the 42 years. Where was this rooted? And where did he get these ideas from, and where was the seed that all these germinated from? So we are reading that, and we are now going backwards. So it took me a little bit of time to realize that. First we looked at the concepts of what the Reformation and the Protestant ideas was, and versus what was happening in the Catholic Church. So that was history. Then we come to skip a few years, and then we come to this 1700s, and then we see how Carey became the father of missions and what he did. But now, what happened before Carey, which influenced him, and that was Pietism. That concept was Pietism, and the mission. So what happened there, and what was it believing? So let's look at now from 1700s. We're going to the 1600s, and so what was the climate that was there? when Pietism was developed and what how it came into being. So it was like the Protestant princes were fighting Catholic leaders, and it was the 30 Years' War. There's a lot of history, there's a lot of layers in it, and after Googling and reading Wikipedia, I understood it was considered one of the very, very devastating wars, and about 2 million people died a lot, and like cities were wiped out. It was like such in different countries of Europe, and previously everybody thought that the main reason was this religious war between the Protestants and the Catholics. But eventually, historians agree that this 30 Years' War, because different factions, I think in Denmark there was one dynasty or leadership, there was something in Germany, in France. So everyone wanted control. And those were the factors. Of course, the spark would have been this Catholic and Protestant conflict, but then everybody wanted control. And,
It became
and
a political movement, actually.
yeah, so that, but it was like a very, very devastating war, and now we'll see what all was also happening in Europe at that time. So from this, I have no clue about the second bullet, the planks of Pietism, Moravianism, and Puritanisms. So these were things which influenced Carey,
So
and he
you can look at Pietism as some explanation is given here in the book. What is Pietism? But the Moravianism, you have a movie actually on this. Moravian missions, a beautiful movie is there. You can watch that. So they were a group of people who so deeply believed in going out and mission. You know, they go and lived with people, communities that were unreached. Puritanism also was very missional, but they had very strong views on certain thing.
personal like holiness, and then
Yes.
being
But
really
missional, they
pure.
were still missional. But so Carey constructed and from all of these movements and their stress. So you must remember that every one of these movements had an emphasis. Okay, they added a new emphasis. Let's say the Anabaptists brought in the idea of water baptism. And do you know that the Lutherans were dead against Anabaptists? In fact, there is a story that apparently they actually held one guy under water and choked him to death. It's a crazy thing. I mean, when you go through history, sometimes can shake you. Okay, so Carey, of course, from all of this, he built the basis for his modern Protestant missionary movement. That's a good one. Yes.
Okay.
Pastor,
Yeah. So
Yes, please.
so
Pastor, can I
yeah.
ask a question now? Sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt.
you can ask. You can ask.
Pastor, is about this socio-political change. It was actually against the Sati system. How about actually a person who came as a mission to preach the gospel?
Where are you talking? Where are you talking from?
No, I don't know whether I can ask this question, but
Okay.
this actually socio-political climate.
We are talking about the what was in with regard to Carey. How did he develop this whole idea of missions when there was no mission idea in the Lutheran or in the post-Reformation movements? There was no idea of because they believe God predestined and all of those ideas. So how did Carey develop understanding? So from the Pietism and the Moravianism and Puritanism, he developed these things and he launched the Prussian movement. So what Carey did in terms of in India and the Sati movement, that we will come to it a little later.
Okay.
Yes. Shubha's sister, continue. We got 2 minutes more.
Okay, Pastor. So
How many more slides you have?
there are 14 slides, Pastor, because there are a lot of concepts like that.
Yeah. So we will stop exactly at this slide, brother.
Yeah.
If you can finish the slide, this is slide number 9,
Okay.
and we can do the rest of it.
Sure, Pastor. So so I think when that war ended and there was a peace of Westphalia Treaty was signed to end this war. So like I said, like entire cities were wiped off, land was depopulated, people were dehumanized. Like they'd seen so much of war, so much of killings and all that they were desensitized. So that basic thing also, like apathy crept in, and then class divisions were there. Already there was division in the church between clergy and laity, but then there was class divisions. And I think one of the examples was such that, the aristocracy did not want their children to take baptism, where the working class people, children were getting baptized. So
Do you
it was
think it's
like,
still there? Do you think a division between clergy and laity is there in our churches? Do you think we still have class divisions? Will a person from a lower caste, born again, baptized, if we are calling each other brothers, would we give our daughters to sing, or would they accept? Is this there still in the church?
yes, Pastor.
What do others say?
Yes, very
Yes, it is there.
Crazy, no? If this is how many years old? We still there's not that the gospel touches in these areas. We keep it only for Sunday 2 hours. Okay, anyway, we'll come to it a little later. We'll loss of time. Okay.
Okay, and now, unfortunately, the sad thing that happened was that people were focusing on the intellectual aspect of faith rather than heartfelt trust in a living God.
Mhm.
So that was the socio-political, and maybe we can say the religious climate of the at that time when Pietism came into being. So now, how did Pietism come into being? Because there were certain developments also happening in the Protestant world, and there was this Lutheran facility of Wittenberg, and this is, I think, all Germany. They asserted. So already we know, we have seen in the previous slides that they said that the Great Commission. That's what. Sorry.
Got it, sister. You can continue.
That guy, he got it from that commission is valid on all the believers. So so then there was a reassertion that the Great Commission is still valid, and the dominant view of the Lutheran Church and many Reformed churches, they adopted this view that Great Commission is still valid, and for the next 150 years, they did believe in this. And what were the other points? Okay, so the apostles were privileged to fulfill the Great Commission. Yeah. Pastor, you were saying something.
So the idea that was Lutheran faculty of the University of Wittenberg asserted the continuing validity of the Great Commission, dominant view of the Lutheran Church. That means to say their idea that Great Commission was there is they validated it, but they believed it was done finished with the Apostles' time. That's the first point you're making now after that. So we need to keep that in mind. The Protestant movement believed the Great Commission. Yes, they believed in the Great Commission, but they believed it was finished with the apostles. It was not continuing. So they held that belief for 150 years.
So like only this, I think the Lutheran facility of the university believed it, but the major view, this was a minor view, like, sorry, I should have said it before the semicolon with this part. The Lutheran facility of the university, they believed, yes, the validity of the Great Commission, but what was the dominant view which was held by many of the Reformed churches for the next 150 years? These were the three tenets of the main beliefs. Like the apostles had the privilege to fulfill the Great Commission, and it was not the responsibility of the church. And those who are not believing now, it's presumed that they have already rejected the gospel when it was preached to them. So then the rulers are also responsible to propagate the rulers are responsible to propagate the gospel, but only in their territories alone. So that also rules out missions once more. So this was the situation out of which Pietism emerged. And in the coming slides, I think we will see, which anyway we'll do in the next session maybe, what has happened. So how that developed. So with that, I'll stop. So we'll have to do like 5 slides.
Yeah, we will do it starting for next the next one. Thank you, Shubha, and I hope any comments, any thoughts, anything that you want to. We will close with this. I'm hoping that all of you will read this article. It is very, very important for you to understand this church history, and because we are all products of these movements, for us to fully comprehend and understand and for us to write the paper also will be very useful. Any comments, any thoughts? Otherwise, we will close for today. Have a wonderful, good night and good rest to your bodies. And let not these thoughts keep you awake. Just put them on paper tomorrow. Good night.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. God bless you.
Good night. God bless you all.